9 spine-chilling maid encounters that will haunt you. Discover the sinister truths. Reveled. Sarah thought she was safe in her tidy suburban home with her 2 sleeping children. The glossy brochure of Bella's cleaning services claimed they were trusted and reliable, but in the dead of night, she received a chilling call from the service that left her shaking. The woman on the line whispered about keeping secrets, followed by a cackle that echoed through her bones. Heart racing, she pulled back the curtains. Outside her window, the maid stood still, her eyes locked on Sarah, shimmering with an unsettling intensity. It felt wrong. She dismissed it as paranoia, impossible, right? But strange things began to happen. The coffee mug she always used vanished, only to be found weeks later, glazed with dust beneath the sofa. The children's toys, once organized neatly, became scattered all over the floor unexpectedly. And the murmurs, soft, barely there, grew louder as she came through the front door after grocery runs. Each grocery bag felt like a shield against invisible specters drawn to her growing anxiety. One restless night, unable to ignore the heaviness in her chest, Sarah ventured into the attic. Light poured through a cracked window, illuminating a hidden door tucked behind old boxes. Mustering courage, she opened it and gasped. Inside, remnants of lives lost flickered in her mind: a torn family photo, a broken toy that once belonged to a child just like hers. The air was thick with whispers of sorrow that sank into her heart. "Mom!" A voice called her back, tearing her from the dark room. "The authorities?" She contacted them, pouring out her fears, but they dismissed her. "Just a stressed single mother," they said. "Nothing to worry about." The crushing loneliness settled in like a cold fog. Stranded in doubt and denial, she turned to her neighbors for answers. Each conversation felt like an investigation, revealing true faces hidden beneath smiles. They flinched at her inquiries, their eyes darting as though the very air carried memories of silenced screams. When the maid returned, it erupted into chaos. Their confrontation crackled like a thunderstorm. "This place was never yours to claim," the maid hissed, her voice dripping with malice. "Families like yours are just pawns in a darker game." The ominous words loomed over Sarah like a shadow, casting doubt on everything she once believed. Before she could react, the maid flashed a twisted smile that sent chills racing down her spine. Sarah knew she had to escape. She darted through the back door, her breath hitching as the darkness enveloped her. It held secrets, wrapped tightly in the arms of the neighborhood she thought she knew. As the streetlights flickered on one by one, she paused, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Her heart pounded like a drum in her ears. Questions surged: who in this pristine community was part of the hidden terror? She glanced back at her home, now cloaked in shadows. The sanctuary she clung to was no longer safe. It had morphed into a haunting tableau of betrayal. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The air thickened around her as the dread crept closer. The feeling of being watched surged through her. With every passing minute, her sanctuary transformed into a labyrinth of terror. Tremors threatened to overwhelm her, dragging her into an unknown abyss. She stood at the edge of chaos, knowing she had to uncover the darkest secrets hiding in plain sight. What other horrors waited to be unearthed in this quiet neighborhood? The night deepened, and Sarah felt time slipping through her fingers like sand. Sarah ran, her footsteps echoing on the pavement like a frantic heartbeat. She glanced back over her shoulder, half expecting to see the maid's sinister grin lurking behind her, but only darkness followed. The street felt alive, shadows twisting with unseen life, playing tricks on her mind. In the distance, her neighbor's porch light flickered unsteadily, projecting wavering patterns like a warning beacon. With urgency clawing at her throat, she darted toward it, hoping for refuge. "Help!" she blurted as she reached the door, knocking violently. Mrs. Thompson, the kindly old lady who lived next door, answered with bleary eyes, clearly confused. Sarah? What has happened? The maid. I don't know what she's capable of. We're not safe. Fears surged through Sarah, her chest heaving as panic threatened to overwhelm her. Mrs. Thompson frowned, considering her words, then pulled Sarah inside, shutting the door tightly. You need to calm down, sip water. Tell me exactly what happened. But every gulp of air felt like lead in her lungs. The safe confines of Mrs. Thompson's home only amplified the palpable dread. What secrets lay buried beneath their seemingly perfect lives? What darkness lurked behind each friendly facade? Sarah, sit, Mrs. Thompson urged, her voice smooth like honey. You mustn't let these fears consume you. Maybe you're just imagining things. But Sarah could feel it, an insistent weight pressing down, as if the very walls were listening. She tucked her knees to her chest, her mind spiraling with memories of the attic and the lost toys. Let me show you, she gasped, bolting back toward the door. Mrs. Thompson gripped her arm, shaking her head. No! You can't go out there. It's late. You'll frighten the children. The kids! Sarah gasped. She had left them alone back at home, surrounded by shadows. Panic twisted like a knife in her gut. She had to get back. I have to go! In that moment, the door rattled, a sudden chill sweeping through the room. Sarah froze, heart pounding as the knob twisted slowly, the sound of someone or something on the other side. Sarah! Mrs. Thompson hissed, her voice breaking with urgency. Lock the door! It could be the maid. Time stretched unbearably as Sarah lunged for the door's lock, her fingers fumbling in terror. But Mrs. Thompson suddenly stepped forward, advancing toward the door. Stay back! Sarah shouted, fear clawing at the edges of her sanity. What are you doing? Mrs. Thompson's expression shifted, her warm demeanor shrouding in shadows. Sometimes you have to let them in to understand, she said cryptically, her gaze fixated on the door. What do you mean? Before she could process, the door burst open, flung against the wall, revealing the maid standing there, silhouetted against the light of the street lamps. Her haunting smile sliced through Sarah's heart like glass. You've missed me, haven't you? The maid said, her voice dripping with venom. The air turned electric. Sarah's pulse thundered. How had she found them? What was the maid planning? Behind her, Mrs. Thompson began to laugh, a low, chilling sound, as if she were enjoying a moment she had been waiting for. The words tumbled out of her lips, distorted and thick like molasses. You see, dear Sarah, nothing remains hidden forever. And in that moment, dread crashed around Sarah. She was trapped, surrounded by a circle of darkness that had been waiting, plotting. As the reality sank in, she realized that she wasn't just running from one maid. There was a network, a web of secrets beneath this neighborhood, entangling everyone in its grip. What have you done? She gasped, stepping back toward the door. Mrs. Thompson stepped closer, her laughter enveloping Sarah like fog. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving only the cold grip of despair and the chilling question echoing in her mind. Whose side were they really on? The answer loomed in the shadows, and Sarah could only hope to survive long enough to find it. The maid stepped inside, her presence commanding the room like a storm rushing through an open window. Shadows flickered, lengthening across the wooden floor as the door slammed behind Sarah, closing off any escape. Sarah recoiled, her skin prickling with a visceral fear. The maid's smile remained, too wide, too unnatural. It brought a surge of bile to Sarah's throat. You shouldn't have run, darling. Now you'll have to face the consequences, she purred, her icy breath slicing through the air. Mrs. Thompson's eyes glimmered with something akin to delight, as if Sarah's terror was a performance she couldn't help but applaud. Oh, this is delightful! Such a show, she cooed, bouncing lightly on her feet like a child waiting to open presents. Don't you see? She's part of the family now. What did she mean? The confusion twisted inside Sarah, but clarity came rushing back as she recalled the lost toys in the attic, the whispers in the air that had seemed harmless then. They weren't just ghosts of childlike imagination, they were warnings. "Let me out!" Sarah cried, her voice shaking, but the maid simply took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. The air grew thick, oppressive, almost palpable. "Oh dear, you're not going anywhere, Sarah. Not while I'm here." The shadows in the room seemed to creep closer, as though reaching out, ready to fold in around her. Panic bubbled deep within her as she glanced at Mrs. Thompson, seeking solidarity, a glimmer of help, but found only a wild spark of madness in the older woman's gaze. "Don't you understand?" Mrs. Thompson continued, her words flowing like honeyed poison. "We've been waiting for you to embrace the truth. All of it. This world and its secrets, it's all connected. The maids, the children, the lost souls, they whisper to us." Whisper? Sarah's mind raced. Her gut twisted as feverish images of children's laughter echoed in her ears, lost and forlorn, trapped like she was now. "What have you done to my children?" she gasped, the horror unfurling like a dark flower deep within her. "They're safe," the maid interjected, her voice low and slithery. "For now. But they can only remain safe if you cooperate." Sweat broke out on Sarah's brow as she realized the gravity of the situation. This was all a game, a sick game with stakes that involved everything she loved. "Just listen," Mrs. Thompson coaxed. "Join us, Sarah. You can't fight the darkness, it'll only consume you. Let it guide you." The words wrapped around Sarah like a noose, tightening inexorably. "I want tea!" she shouted, but deep down, doubt began to worm its way in. The desperation swelled, filling the air like smoke. Suddenly, shrill laughter erupted from the sidelines. It exploded like a dam breaking, rupturing the fragile walls of the room. Shadows danced and flickered, warping into grotesque shapes. The maid raised her hand, and the laughter ceased, replaced by a suffocating silence. "And if you refuse," the maid said softly, her eyes piercing into the depths of Sarah's soul, "you'll lose more than you can imagine. The darkness will take its toll. Your children, their fate will be sealed." Time seemed to shatter at that moment. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest. What could she do? The walls around her pulsed, a pulsating reminder that freedom was slipping away. Desperation washed over her. She mustered all the bravery she had left. "I'd rather die than join you." Instantly, the maid's expression darkened, her smile fading into a sneer. "You truly don't understand the depths of your choice, do you?" Then, without warning, shadows spilled forth from the corners of the room, swirling and undulating like smoke trying to snare her. Sarah stumbled backward toward the kitchen, breath hitching in her throat as a haunting voice whispered, "It's already too late." The darkness rushed forward, an army of nightmares converging on her single point of light, leaving only an echo of the fate that awaited her. The last thing Sarah saw was Mrs. Thompson's twisted smile. The glee on her face was a ghost that would haunt Sarah long after the lights faded. What chilling secrets lingered within this household? With eyes shut tight, heart racing, the answer loomed just outside her grasp, waiting for her to uncover the truth within the shadows. The shadows lunged, a dark, shapeless mass pulling Sarah into their murky depths. Clawing at her, cold fingers wrapped around her wrists, dragging her into a nightmare. Panic screamed through her as she felt the energy of the room shift, closing in, sealing her fate. She stumbled, frantically trying to retain her balance. The maid loomed closer, her features twisting and distorting in the flickering candlelight. "You think you have a choice? Look around you!" she hissed. As Sarah spun in every direction, her gaze fell upon a mirrored wall, an entire history reflected in shards. Faces of children, pale and wide-eyed, stared back at her. Their mouths moved, silently pleading for her to understand, to escape, but their voices were lost in the thickening fog of despair. "No!" Sarah cried, her voice trembling, reverberating against the walls. "I'm not a part of this!" The shadows shrieked in response, rising in fury, clashing against her defiance. Mrs. Thompson's laughter echoed in the background, low and menacing. "You already are, dear Sarah. The moment you entered our home, you became connected to us, to them. The darkness thrives on fear, you've just fed it. A sickening realization sank in. The missing toys, the odd whispers in the attic, every strange occurrence, it was a web, woven tight by secrets, and she was trapped within it. She took a step back, her heart pounding like a drum echoing through her skull. Desperate, she lunged forward. Out of my way! Adrenaline coursed through her as she shoved past the maid, barreling toward the door she prayed would swing free. But no sooner had she reached for the knob than it turned to ice beneath her fingers. Nurse's laughter pricked at her ears, as if the house itself was reveling in her suffering. She spun around to find the maid only a breath away, eyes narrowing into piercing slits. Silly girl. You must understand, the door can't be opened by those who belong to the light. You must embrace the dark. Sarah shivered, her resolve wavering. Every ounce of her being screamed to run, to escape. What do you want from me? She gasped, her voice barely a whisper over the creaking shadows. We need you to accept your fate, the maid replied, her words slithering through the air. You have a role to play. Just join us, and your children will remain untouched, safe. It's a simple exchange. Fear clawed at Sarah's throat, thick and suffocating. Safe? She scoffed, the word morphing into a bitter taste. You think that as safety? It's a prison. Surely you understand. Mrs. Thompson chimed in, her voice maternal but dark. All your suffering, all your trials, they lead to this moment. We can protect your children, keep them away from the dark. But you must accept. Every word was a lure, drawing her deeper. The pulse of the house resonated with the heartbeat of 1,000 souls. Shadows curled tighter around her. The air whispered secrets of torment and despair, and for a fleeting second, Sarah felt a threat of temptation. Could she really do it? Embrace this nightmare to save her children? Then, a snapshot memory struck her children laughing in the sunlight, their innocence untouched by this grotesque horror. She pushed back the seeping darkness with newfound strength. No! You can't have them! At her shout, a surge of energy crackled through the air, light piercing the heavy shadows momentarily. The maid staggered, her expression shifting to one of fury. In that instant, a door appeared behind the maid, shimmering like a mirage. It wasn't just a door to the outside, it was a chance, a glimmer of hope. Would it lead her children to safety, or deeper into the abyss? But before she could move, the world around her warped. Time fractured, and the echoes of children's laughter spiraled back into bone-chilling screams. Make your choice. The maid snarled, shadows thickening, grasping at her with unyielding hunger. As strangled cries rang out, Sarah had to decide, would she stay and fight against the darkness or make a dash for freedom through that shimmering door? What was waiting for her on the other side? The choice loomed large, a decision that could tip the scales for all involved. The weight of the moment pressed on her, and so did the darkness. What would Sarah do? The answer was lurking just beyond her reach, shrouded in the ominous fog of fate. The shadows tightened around Sarah, thickening until each breath felt like a battle against a vice. Fear coiled deep in her gut, rooting her in place, though her instincts screamed for her to run. The shimmering door gleamed behind the maid, hauntingly inviting, but dread lingered beneath its allure. Was it a passage to freedom or merely another trap? Time blurred, the shrieks of the children echoed, an unbearable symphony of terror. Each sound smacked against her skull, igniting her fight-or-flight instincts. Tears brimmed in her eyes as the maid's cold laugh cut through the chaos. They're counting on you, Sarah. Don't let their cries distract you. Join us, and you'll find peace. No! Sarah yelled, voice cracking in defiance. The walls shuddered at her resolve, as if the house itself was momentarily shocked. The maid's expression flickered, rage replaced by a glimmer of something resembling fear. With the unexpected boldness of a cornered animal, Sarah surged forward. She didn't just move toward the door. She lunged at the maid, desperation fueling her. The maid reeled back, taken aback for just a moment. It wasn't enough. Just as quickly as surprise flitted across her face, anger returned, twisting her features into a mask of wrath. Foolish girl! The maid hissed, swinging an arm that seemed to stretch impossibly wide, grasping for Sarah's neck. The shadows lashed out like living tendrils, snatching at Sarah's ankles, pulling her down. She yanked her legs free, adrenaline surging. Horror molded itself into determination. The shimmering door blurred in her peripheral vision, flickering like a dying ember. Was it truly an escape? Could it really lead her children to light, away from the looming grasp of despair? "Your choice is made," boomed Mrs. Thompson from the depths of the darkness, her voice echoing like distant thunder. Sarah fought against the shadows, something primal igniting within her. She spun to face the door, her hand outstretched. The chill pressed against her skin like icy fingers, but she pushed past it. She could almost taste the freedom that lay just inches away. Doubt lingered, hovering like an unwelcome guest at the edge of her mind, but she knew she couldn't give in. With a final, desperate thrust, she flung her body towards the shimmering light, half expecting it to extinguish as she approached. Instead, it pulsed brighter. A surge of warmth enveloped her, unwinding the tight coils of fear spiraling inside. Suddenly, from the darkness, the maid's voice split the air, guttural and possessive. "You will never escape. This is your place." Sarah felt the shadows coiling tighter around her thick, sinewy streams wrapped around her limbs like serpents. She screamed but pressed on. The door edged closer, blinding rays pouring through, illuminating the darkness with the promise of hope. She broke through the palpable tension, grasping the doorknob, that frigid metal no longer chilling. Instead, it surged with warmth against her palm. She twisted it, pushing with every ounce of strength left within her. The door creaked open, revealing a world bathed in sunlight, her garden, her home. But the shadows raged behind her, a cruel reminder that something was still lurking. "Sarah!" a voice called out. Was it her children? Their laughter? It echoed sweetly, puncturing through the shroud of darkness. But then she saw them, or rather, heard them echoing in the distance. The shadows screamed too, mixed with laughter, their tones merging into a monster's anthem. "You can't run from your past!" the maid shrieked, the shadows swirling with renewed ferocity, a rising storm aiming to snatch Sarah back into the pit. With a final resolve, she stepped through the door. The light engulfed her, and she felt her heart thud against her chest. It was a leap into the unknown. But what awaited her there? Would she find her children? Or would the darkness follow, relentless and insatiable, consuming everything she held dear? As reality shifted, Sarah looked back once, a final glance filled with dread and hope combined. The maid stood motionless, shadows writhing at her feet, dark eyes burning with a promise of vengeance. And thus, uncertainty lingered. What was waiting for Sarah in the light beyond? Would the horrors release their grip, or would they only grow bolder? The stakes had never been higher, and the remnants of darkness still loomed large. What choice would now shape her fate? The world beyond the door was disorientating. Blinding light enveloped Sarah like a warm embrace, yet it felt brittle, like glass waiting to shatter. She stumbled forward, desperate for the sensation of earth under her feet, but the garden looked wrong, twisted and unnatural, colors bleeding into one another. It was her sanctuary, yet morphed into something sinister. "Mommy!" The ecstatic voices of her children cut through the haze. She turned, her heart racing. There they were, innocent and unscathed, playing in the wildflowers. Their laughter rang out like music, but fear squeezed around her throat. The shadows loomed still behind her, a reminder that they were not safe. Not yet. "Mom!" They reached for her, their tiny hands outstretched. But even as she rushed toward them, doubt gnawed at her core. Were they real? Or phantoms conjured by the darkness still lurking? "Stay close!" she shouted, her voice cracking from fear, pushing through the thick air that felt alive with tension. As she neared, the specter of the maid loomed in her mind. "We have to get out of here!" The children laughed. It was a beautiful, untainted sound. Yet even that was tinged with an unearthly echo, a dissonance that sent shivers down her spine. She reached for them just as the air thickened, shadows swirling at her feet. "Sarah," the voice was soft yet menacing, creeping around her like a predatory mist. "You cannot escape your fate." Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the garden shifting. The vibrant flowers wilted, the grass darkened, as if poisoned by the shadows. "No! You're not real!" Sarah screamed, desperation clawing at her chest. With every second, the light dimmed, threatening to wash her back into darkness. "Mommy, come play!" They beckoned, their eyes unblinking, glistening under the harsh sun. But ease and worry wrestled in her heart. "Please!" They urged again, this time in unison, the plea catchy, insistent. "No!" She closed her eyes, picturing their faces until the memory burned brighter than the sun itself. "You're not my children!" With newfound strength, she turned her back on the distorted visions, glancing toward the ominous door still open behind her. The maid's laughter bellowed from the shadows, a symphony of malice that made her stomach drop. "You belong here. Join us," the maid's guttural voice resonated, frightening and beautiful, an unspeakable invitation to despair. "Family is everything, Sarah. Remember your place." With a steely resolve, Sarah dashed away, eyes locked on the door. Each step felt heavy as shadows ensnared her ankles, yanking her back, but she pressed on. The ground shook, rippling like water beneath her feet. She didn't dare look back. "Go!" her instincts screamed. The door pulsed like a heartbeat, and she felt herself fueled by an electric surge of hope. "Mom! Please!" The chorus of the children drifted through the fading light, accompanied by the maid's mocking laughter. Just as she reached the threshold, icy fingers grabbed her waist. The shadows closed in, dark pinwheels spiraling out of control, taunting her. "You cannot leave!" they hissed, teasing her. The moment hung, a breath caught in the throat of destiny. Sarah stumbled. Was she really close to freedom? Or would the relentless grasp of her past pull her back into the abyss? The question echoed in her mind as she crossed the threshold. The world blurred around her, and for a heartbeat, the light flickered ever so slightly, as if anticipating an unseen danger shrouded in the depths beyond. Then she felt it, the unmistakable grip of something cold wrapping around her heart in this new world. What would welcome her? Would the shadows follow or disperse? Time spun uncertainly, and she was left to face the looming question: what would she sacrifice to save her future? Sarah stumbled into chaos. The transition felt like a violent jerk in reality, sending her reeling. Light morphed into a haze, leaving a metallic tang on her tongue. She gasped, throat dry as paper, every breath catching in panic. The ground beneath her felt wrong, not solid, but a shifting sand that slipped away. "Where am I?" she whispered, fear curling her stomach. The air vibrated with whispers, sweet and sinister. The landscape unfolded around her, an eerie mist drifting through the trees, obscuring whatever was beyond. The once vibrant colors had dulled, an endless gray encompassing everything. "Mommy!" The call tore through the fog, sending icy tendrils clenching around her heart. "Cassie? Liam?" She turned, eyes wide, scanning the emptiness. A chill wrapped around her, every instinct screamed to run. She felt the weight of unseen eyes, pricking at her skin. "Mommy!" A snicker echoed a sound just behind her. "Why do you look so scared?" The voice was melodic, silk over steel. She spun, only to be greeted by the mist coiling around a familiar figure, the maid. Again. "Stay away from me!" Sarah shouted, her voice sharp with desperation. The maid only smiled, teeth gleaming in the dim light. "You think you can escape? You've always been lost, Sarah." The air thickened, pressing against Sarah's chest. Despair lodged itself in her throat. "What do you want from me?" "Only to help you embrace your true family." The maid gestured to a vision breaking through the fog. Ghostly figures floated forward, shapes resembling her children, but distorted, faces melting into grotesque masks. "Mommy, please!" they cried, echoes of innocence twisted into chaos. "No! You aren't real!" Sarah felt faint, her heartbeat pounding in her ears like a war drum. "Where will you go?" the maid crooned, her voice curling like smoke. "You cannot outrun destiny. You belong in the shadows, just like the rest of your family." "Shut up!" Sarah screamed. She couldn't let them pull her under. Mustering whatever strength remained, she sprinted into the thickening fog, feeling the dampness clinging like a shroud. The laughter of the maid trailed behind, its chilling melody filling the hollow spaces of her mind. But as she ran, shadows reached out, clawing at her ankles. She stumbled, falling hard against the cold ground, skin scraping against the rough earth. "Mommy, there's nothing to fear," the voices of her children droned together, mocking and sweet. "Let us be together." "Please, no!" Sarah gasped, pushing herself up. The faint outlines of her children shimmered like mirages never fully forming, always just out of reach. She looked up, trembling. The shadows danced closer, and time felt like it was warping around her, stretching endlessly. Just then, something seized her arm. A coldness gripped her wrist, spinning her around. It was the maid, her grip stronger than ever, drawing Sarah closer, the touch hollow and icy. "You will join us. Embrace your fate. Embrace home." "No!" The word tore from her lips. The shadows encircled her like a storm, but as she fought, the maid leaned in closer, her breath a frosty whisper. "Your children need you. Remember that." Suddenly, Sarah felt a rush of warmth flood through her, the shadows recoiling a fleeting moment of hope. But that warmth flickered, like a candle's last breath, and she could see her children's faces morphing again, sorrowful yet predatory. And the maid, the smile lingering, said, "The choice is yours, but remember, love can shatter the strongest of chains." What choice? Fear wrestled within her. Run toward the shadows or let herself be absorbed into whatever horror awaited. In that chilling moment, Sarah stood at the precipice of decision. Which path would she take? As the fog thickened and shadows stretched ominously, she whispered, "What if I choose neither?" The laughter erupted, loud and haunting, as reality began to slip again. What awaited her in those depths? Time twisted ever further, while the whispers grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. Would she risk everything for a chance at salvation? Sarah felt the ground pull beneath her, a dark heartbeat echoing through her core. She staggered, breathless, fighting against the unseen force that clamored for her submission. The laughter of the maid reverberated in her ears, a sinister lullaby promising despair. "You can't hide forever," it whispered, weaving through the treetops, slithering into her mind. She sprinted, heart racing, each footfall sending a jarring shock through her body. There had to be an escape. Sarah clenched her fists, willing her legs to carry her faster, but the certainty of her fate loomed large. The chill of fear gripped her, and she scolded herself for hesitating. "Mommy!" A voice cut through the cacophony. Liam's voice, unmistakable amidst the terror. Her heart crackled with hope, breaking through the suffocating fog. "Liam!" she cried, spinning on her heels, eyes searching frantically. The mist parted and open path appeared. She took a step forward, then another, her feet pounding on the soft earth, urgency driving her. Each breath tasted sour, twisting in her throat as she strained to see through the drifting shadows. "Mommy, come closer!" The voice sounded softer now, almost sweet. Familiar laughter danced like wind chimes, yet something beneath it twisted her stomach. Just wait!" she shouted, but the further she walked, the fainter the voice grew. The silhouettes of children appeared, flickering like flames, faces full of longing and dread. "Mommy, please!" They beckoned, desperate hands reaching out, shadowy forms collapsing inward. Suddenly, the ground fluctuated, shifting akin to quicksand. Panic set in as she felt her shoes sink. Barely managing to keep herself upright, she willed herself forward. But where? The shapes of her children flickered and shifted, fractured like old glass. "Join us," they urged, their words morphing into disjointed whispers. The maid lingered just behind them, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Give in to them, Sarah. It's easier this way." "No!" The cry exploded from her. She couldn't let those distorted images consume her. The thrill of despair surged, nearly overwhelming her. "You're not real. Are you sure?" The maid stepped closer, her presence dripping with malice. "They want you. They still need their mother." Sarah stumbled back, fighting against the tide of memories flooding her mind. Joyful laughter, bedtime stories, the way Liam's eyes sparkled when he wanted his mom's attention. But these figures twisted those innocent memories into grotesque parodies, manipulating her love into something unrecognizable. Forget them. Join me. The maid hissed, entering Sarah's personal space, cold sweat flooding her skin. Leave this realm for one where you will be cherished. Feed your longing. Stop it! The sharpness of her voice cracked through the fog. Desperation ignited a spark, a determination rising within her. You're only feeding off my fear. The shadows shrieked, recoiling at her assertion, but the maid's expression only brightened. Ah, there's the fire. But don't you see? Every moment you resist brings you closer to the inevitable. Sarah gasped as the patchwork of her reality crumbled around her. She focused on the remaining warmth in her heart, the real memories of her children, vivid and powerful. I wouldn't let my love become a chain. The ground lurched, and a terrifying darkness veiled her surroundings. Tendrils of shadow shot out, wrapping around her limbs, pulling her down. She screamed, fighting against their icy grip, but the maid stepped forward, her voice a sultry whisper. You've chosen your path, Sarah. Now, what will you do when they come for you, those you thought lost? The walls of her mind began to shatter, cracking like glass. The maid's laughter echoed around her, a harrowing sound that crescendoed into a symphony of despair. Just as it all seemed to fold in on itself, a flicker of light appeared in the distance, a beacon through the murky fog. Now or never, Sarah thought, adrenaline pumping through her veins. With one last burst of resolve, she lunged towards it, not knowing what lay ahead, but driven by the fierce love for her children. What awaited her beyond that light? Would it lead to salvation or further darkness? As she reached out, the shadows pulled tighter, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The light engulfed her, a blinding flash that sent electricity coursing through her body. Sarah gasped, the shadows shrieking as they recoiled from the illumination. In a single heartbeat, she felt weightless, as if she had soared above the abyss. But just as swiftly, the brightness faded, and she crashed back into a cold, damp reality. Panic struck again upon the realization that she wasn't alone. Thick fog swirled around her, obscuring everything. The trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at the sky, twitching like lifeless fingers. "Mommy!" The cry echoed again, a haunting sound that splintered her heart. It seemed to come from all directions, painted with a desperation that clawed at her insides. "Where are you? Liam!" she cried out, though her voice felt small and fragile in the overwhelming silence that followed. A shiver raced down her spine as she took a step forward, feeling the ground shift beneath her again. This was no path, no escape, only a deepening pit of dread. She stumbled, feeling unsteady, the air thickening as if the fog were alive, wrapping tight around her limbs. "Mommy!" The whimper transformed into a sinister giggle, echoing hauntingly until it morphed into the maid's voice. "You haven't escaped, Sarah. You merely danced into my next game." The fog shifted, swirling with malice. Faces emerged, twisted forms looking at her with wide, empty eyes. The children she'd envisioned only seconds ago, now masked in shadow and mockery. Sarah's breath quickened. "You're not my children!" Her words faltered, tinged with fear. "Oh, but we are," the maid crooned, emerging from the shadows, her visage more ghostly than human. "We are the memories, the echoes of love turned to dread. And your weakness feeds us." Sarah turned, desperate to avoid the gaze of the figure circling her. "Stop! I wouldn't let you take me." She willed her legs to move, but they felt glued to the ground, anchored by invisible chains of despair. "Isn't it sweet?" the maid taunted. "You fight, yet your heart still seeks them. Your love holds you captive. Join us, and we will be a family again." "No!" The words screamed out of her throat, ripping through the stagnant air. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, drawing on the warmth of her real memories, summer picnics, laughter ringing sweetly, bedtime stories told in gentle tones. "Mommy, come and play." The spectral children laughed, a cruel melody like wind chimes rattling in the storm. Their laughter rose in volume, becoming cacophonous, drowning her thoughts. Shadows coiled and constricted around her, pulling at her limbs, tightening their hold, crisp cold intertwining with her desperation. And then, from the depth of darkness, a scream sliced through the unmistakable voice of Liam, filled with fear. "Mommy!" Her heart raced. She couldn't let him down. The thought lit a fire inside, forcing her to act. "I am not yours. I am his mother." With the strength of that declaration, Sarah summoned every ounce of willpower. She ripped her feet from the earth's grasp and ran, the shadows clawing at her back, whispering twisted promises of surrender. But the light, once just a flicker, grew when she ran toward it again, piercing through the murk. It was hope. It had to be. "Liam!" she shouted, growing louder, the echo reverberating back at her. Suddenly, the laughter shifted, turning to shrieks of rage, the maid's furious yells ringing sharp in her ears. "You cannot escape me! You belong here!" With a final push fueled by determination, she dove into the light, feeling the cold tendrils fray and shatter. Sarah emerged in an unfamiliar place, light pouring over her, but a gnawing fear settled into her bones. Had she really escaped, or was this a new trap? In that moment, a sharp pain lanced through her heart. The ground vibrated, and shadows swirled back to form around her. The maid's face materialized behind the light, her eyes sparkling with malice. "You are never alone, Sarah. We are always watching." Always. The world around her shuddered, leaving her suspended between hope and damnation. What awaited her in this eerie new realm? And would the shadows of her past continue their relentless pursuit? Sarah tumbled forward, breathless and disoriented. The light flickered around her, painting everything with an ethereal glow. She scanned her surroundings, heart racing. Was she free? Or merely lured into another trap? For a moment, uncertainty paralyzed her, fear rooted deep within. The shadows were no longer a mere whisper at her back. They clawed at her thoughts, threatening to drown her in despair. "Liam? Cassie?" she shouted, feeling her voice tear through the silence like a vengeful knife. The void around her was heavy, thick with ghostly murmurs. They were close, but were they only illusions, distractions crafted by the maid's relentless grip? And then she heard it, the sweet sound of laughter, a chorus of familiar giggles breaking through the silence. "Mommy! Over here!" In an instant, hope ignited like wildfire. She sprinted toward the sound, faltering between belief and doubt. Was it real? Was this an invitation from her children, or a final deception? As she dashed forward, the world blurred into a dizzying array of colors. Trees loomed like sentinels, their twisted branches stretching toward her, reaching like fingers. The light flickered, twisting and turning, and just as despair threatened to slink back in, Sarah felt the warmth of unmistakable arms wrap around her waist. "Mommy!" Cassie squealed, and Sarah wrapped her own arms around her children, pulling them close, trembling with relief. "You're safe. You're both safe." Liam beamed up at her, eyes wide, brimming with innocence that fought against the shadows threatening to swallow her whole. The joyous reunion felt surreal, like a dream that could dissolve at any moment. But behind them, the air thickened, the disciples of darkness stirring, ready to reclaim what they considered their own. Sarah felt it, the sinister weight of their presence brushing against her skin, the maid's icy laughter echoing around them. "Run!" she urged, tearing her gaze from the shadows clawing at their heels. The grip of her children pushed her forward, their frightened faces fueled her determination. "Stay close. Don't look back." As they ran, the world twisted around them, a defiant waltz between light and shadow. Laughter and cries mixed in the air, weaving a cacophony of hope and fear. But darkness surged behind, relentless. The maid's voice cut through the chaos, calling out with poisonous sweetness. "You cannot escape your true self. You belong with us." Her words wrapped around Sarah's heart, squeezing until she gasped for air. "Not my children!" Sarah cried, the words dripping with both defiance and reality. "You don't own us!" They sprinted forward, propelled by love and the instinct to survive. The edges of the world began to blur, color drained from the surroundings until only a narrow path of light remained, leading them through the chaos. A flash of understanding hit Sarah amidst the chaos. She was not just fighting for freedom but also for the authenticity of her own family. Their laughter, their love was real, unlike the smiles of the shadows that promised nothing but despair. Finally, as the shadows recoiled, the path illuminated by brilliant light widened, revealing an exit, a shimmering veil where sunbeams cascaded in glorious dance. She felt her heart race wildly as she urged her children toward the light. Just a little more. Sweat glistened on her brow, each step carrying the weight of her fears and hopes. But the maid was relentless, darkness enveloping her, a storm of chaos shrieking behind them. This isn't over. You will always return, she thundered, the shadows swirling closer, seeking to ensnare them once more. We are family. Embrace your fate. Sarah pressed a kiss onto Cassie's forehead and clutched Liam closer. Don't let go. We are stronger together. They burst into the light, the warmth embracing them as they stepped through the veil, a rush of cool air mixed with sunlight, washing over her like a wave of reassurance. The shadows screeched, dying out abruptly as if the light shocked them into silence. The world around them shifted, blossoming with color, the warmth flooding their hearts like a long-lost friend. Suddenly, Sarah halted, still clutching her children, breath trembling, as the ethereal landscape materialized into a radiant garden, alive with vibrant blossoms swaying gently beneath the sun. They blinked in awe, as sounds of chirping birds filled the atmosphere. Here, amidst serenity, a promise of safety blossomed. Mommy? Cassie whispered, her eyes wide, glistening with innocent bewilderment. Are we safe? For now. Sarah knelt, holding her children tightly, tears filling her eyes. We are. We're together. Joy and relief washed over her, but the haunting memories of darkness lingered, always part of who they were. Sarah stood, looking around an expanse of color and warmth, yet a flicker of concern twisted within her. The journey to this sanctuary was fraught with pain, but they'd overcome. The shadows, the maze of fear was a part of her now, but it would no longer control her family. Mommy, look! Liam pointed, his voice breaking through her musings. In the distance, shadows lingered on the edges of their paradise, like ghosts trapped between two worlds. A shiver edged down Sarah's spine, understanding that the darkness might never fully disappear. But she held a promise in her heart: together, they would always find their way back to the light. Hand in hand they stepped forward into the blooming garden, their laughter ringing like a bell, an anthem against the darkness. Each giggle, each joyful promise echoed loudly until the last echo of despair was nothing more than a distant memory. Let us make a home here, Sarah said, breathing deeply, feeling the warmth of hope wrap around them. Yes. A real home. Cassie cheered, and together they ventured into the sunlight, hearts intertwined, determined to build a life woven from laughter and love, casting away the shadows that dared to chase them. But even as they walked, a distant laugh lingered in the air, reminding her that not all shadows were gone. And as she took another step into the light, she whispered a promise: she would never allow darkness to claim her family again. This was their journey. This was their truth. And they would face it together. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. You need to be a part of our family as we uncover more thrilling tales. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let others join in on the adventure. Don't keep this to yourself. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about the ending. Your input matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel, so let us stand together.